Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, after 6 years together, Opie and his girlfriend pursue their dream of opening a bar and restaurant. He becomes uneasy about her close relationship with a new bartender, Eric. Rumors of an affair surface, leading him to investigate. He discovers proof of their infidelity through security footage. Now let's get into the story. My girlfriend and I had been together for 6 years. I loved her and I wanted to be with her for the rest of my life, but apparently she had different feelings about that. Neither my girlfriend nor I went to college after high school, so we spent a lot of time trying to work to make ends meet. When we weren't working, we were spending time in town at local bars and restaurants. Our dream was to open a restaurant and bar for ourselves. We talked about it all the time, and we were hoping to get a business plan in order so we could try to get started. After a couple of years of planning and dreaming, we finally had a bit of a breakthrough in it. My uncle passed away and left me a large house. He didn't have any children or many other relatives, but he did know that I was hoping to open my own business. He hoped I could sell a house and invest the money in my bar. Some of my family members advised me against going into business with my girlfriend because we weren't married, but I didn't listen to them. I trusted her and I thought that she and I were going to be together for the rest of our lives. I wanted to marry her, but I wanted to make sure I could give her the perfect wedding that she'd always dreamed of. That meant having the business up and running. The only thing that I did to protect myself was make sure she wasn't on as a business partner. She was listed as an employee, so God forbid anything happened, I had an out. The thing is, I didn't tell her that. She was under the impression that we were equal partners in the business, and I knew telling her otherwise would hurt her feelings. We started working on everything, and within a year, we were preparing to open for the first night. My girlfriend was in charge of hiring the staff, and I told her to give me the rundown when she was done. After she came to me with the resumes and information from the people that she hired, I looked over everything. We hired talented cooks, experienced servers and hosts, and for the most part, I was in the bartenders were skilled. However, there was one that didn't have any bartending experience. His name was Eric, and his only work experience was at an office supply store. I questioned her about it, wondering why she would hire them over another applicant who had experience. If she liked him and wanted to give him a job, why wouldn't she hire him as a host or server? Training somebody in either of those roles would be much easier than bartending. She didn't really have a good reason for hiring Eric. She told me that she had a gut feeling about him after they were talking about drinks. She told me that I just needed to trust her because she already hired him and they couldn't undo it. I had too much other stuff to worry about to focus on why she hired him. A couple of weeks before opening, all of the staff came in to train and sign their contracts. I met Eric for the first time when I introduced myself to him. He was a good-looking guy. With his lack of experience, part of me assumed that that was why my girlfriend hired him. I thought it was pretty annoying. When we got back to our house later that night, I mentioned it, and she got angry with me for even suggesting that. We dropped it so there wasn't an argument, and we both went to bed. Over the next couple of weeks, I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off. I had so much to do, and there wasn't enough time to do it. I wanted our opening to be completely flawless, and it felt like my girlfriend wasn't putting in the effort that I was. Instead of helping me with all of the last-minute things that had come up, she was focusing on training Eric at the bar. At the heart of our business, we were a bar. We needed bartenders who knew what they were doing and weren't relying on a week and a half of training and a cocktail recipe book. I had to go visit a supplier one afternoon, and when I got back, my girlfriend was behind the bar with Eric, and they were laughing and standing very close to each other. It almost looked like Eric was groping her when I walked in. I asked what was so funny, and when I approached, I could tell that they were a little bit drunk. I had a realization then that my girlfriend didn't have as much stake in the business as I did, so she didn't care as much. I had a conversation with her later that night, and I told her that I needed her to step up with work. She tried to tell me that she was working hard training Eric, and then I brought up how uncomfortable I was with their relationship. It looked like it was crossing some lines, and I told her that I didn't like it. I already felt like she hired Eric because he was good looking, and seeing them so close together bothered me. She told me that I was controlling when I said that. I was kind of flabbergasted that she would accuse me of that when any sane person seen the way they acted together would feel the same. If the shoe was on the other foot and I was acting like that with one of the cube servers she hired, she wouldn't let me hear the end of it. I didn't want to focus on arguing with her so close to the opening because it would only distract me. Opening night came, and for the most part, it was a huge success. We advertised the business and a bunch of people came in, and it seemed like they enjoyed themselves. The only issue that we had was Eric being horrible at his job. Over the next several weeks, the business was doing very well, and I thought that if it kept up the way that it was, we would be seeing profits in no time. With everyone busy at work, my girlfriend and Eric seemed to be spending less time with each other. I was glad to see that. I was in my office one Friday afternoon, and one of the cooks knocked on the door and closed it behind him. I assumed that he was about to quit. Instead, he told me about a rumor that had been going around about my wife and Eric sleeping with each other. I could tell he was nervous about bringing that information to me because his job might have been on the line, but he felt like it was the right thing to do. So he did, which I appreciated. I figured that the rumor might have just been people looking at their relationship and thinking the same things I did, but something told me that maybe there was something more to it. I hadn't seen them together often since the restaurant opened, but that didn't mean they weren't hiding something. I didn't confront my girlfriend about it right away. Instead, I pretended like I didn't know anything about the rumor and I watched her. Now that I wasn't busy with the opening of the restaurant, I had time to pay attention to things like that. Over the week that I started watching her, I noticed that she was absent quite a bit. There would be periods of time when I would be home and she wouldn't be there. She would show up at the bar about an hour after I expected her. On top of that, she and Eric didn't talk to each other at work. However, I did see them glancing over at each other often. All of that together was enough to make me think that something was going on. We had a no-phone policy on the floor, and I knew that my girlfriend usually left her phone in her bag while she was working at the bar. So, I went into her locker one evening while she was supervising the front of the house. It didn't take me long to find the evidence that I needed to prove that she was having an affair with Eric. I found videos of the two of them together and countless text messages. It seemed like their affair started while she was training him at the bar. From what I could gather, they had intimate in the bar. Because she was my girlfriend, but also technically my employee, I was in a sticky situation. I wanted to break up with her, and I wanted to fire her. Eric was as good as done at the business too. But I couldn't behave in any way that would risk me getting in trouble, not with the business so new. From what I saw on the phone, it looked like they were fooling around on the property from time to time. I figured the only thing I could do was catch them in the act, and I could fire them both then. We had security cameras at the bar, so I started monitoring them regularly. The first instance I saw of them together, I recorded it on the cameras. They both went into the walk-in freezer, and my girlfriend performed oral intimate on Eric. That was sufficient evidence for me to fire them. I called them into my office the next day, and I showed them the video. They were completely silent while they watched it. When it was done, I told them both that they were fired. Eric nodded his head and apologized for sleeping with my girlfriend and left the office. My girlfriend lingered behind and told me that I wasn't able to fire her because of her position in the business. I pointed out the truth. I had been advised against working with her as a business partner by my family, and I took that advice. She was an employee of mine, and I was firing her. She had no monetary investment in the business, and she was paid bi-weekly just like every other employee. I also pointed out that if she paid any attention to the business at any point while I was building it from the ground up, she might have noticed that. She told me she was going to have a lawyer evaluate everything, but I didn't care. I just wanted her out of my business. After they were both fired, I thanked the cook who told me about their relationship and informed everybody else about the change in management. They asked me about what happened, and I didn't hold back the truth. I told them about finding the footage of my girlfriend and Eric in the walk-in. My girlfriend never ended up getting a lawyer. She probably couldn't afford to get one if she wanted to. After I fired her, she had to practically beg for her old job back, and now she's working paycheck to paycheck again. Eric wasn't really interested in her aside for her being a quick hookup every now and then. Eric had the audacity to put my name on his resume to give him a reference for another job. They called me, and I told them the truth about everything, advising them not to hire him. I always thought he was kind of an idiot, but that was just too much. I'm focusing my attention on the business now. It's been doing very well, and there is the demand in my town to open up other places, so I'm trying to look toward the future. Today's second story. In this story, Opie reconnects with a woman from his hometown after college, and they marry, sharing dreams of family life. However, she rekindles an affair with a high school boyfriend, leading to divorce. The town shuns the couple and he moves on, finding love again with someone who shared similar heartbreak. They now happily expect their first child. Now let's get into the story. My wife and I were born and raised in the same small town. I was a few years older than her, so we didn't interact until both of us were finished with college and had moved back. She had just come back after finishing school. The two of us bumped into each other in the grocery store and struck up a conversation. I knew of her because it was a small town, but I didn't know her personally. She had the same deal with me. After checking out, we talked to our cars, exchanged numbers, and went about our day. From the start, we seemed like a good match. We both wanted to live in the town we were born in and eventually raise a family there. The two of us also worked in the medical sector, so this was another similarity we had. It was slow going at first because neither of us was sure it was going to work, but as time passed, it became clear it was turning serious. I always knew that I wanted a wife, kids, a house, and the whole 9 yards. She seemed like she did as well, so when I proposed, it wasn't that much of a surprise. The whole town seemed to be celebrating with us. Like I said, it was a small town. Both our families were well known and had a lot of friends here. I suppose that was why I was so insistent on coming back to eventually live here. It was a great place to just live and raise a family. Once we got married, the two of us decided to rent an apartment while we saved money up for a down payment on a house. Both our parents were more than willing to help us, but for now, we just wanted to see how much we could save. I might seem like I'm coming off as straightforward and practical, but I did love my wife very much. I'd never meshed with someone like I did her, and I assumed she felt the same. For the first 2.5 years of marriage, things were going great. It was around this time, however, that I noticed my wife getting rather short with me. She'd snap at me about things that normally didn't bother her before, and it was a little startling. I thought she might have been dealing with some stuff at work, so I gave her a little time. After 6 months, the attitude started to change. My wife seemed happy and giddy again, though then something else started to pop up. My wife was always busy. When we did interact, things were fine, but this seemed to happen less and less. At the time, I was just glad she was no longer snapping at me, but there was this little voice in my head telling me something was off. I just want to tell you that you need to listen to it, because usually it isn't wrong. A part of me wanted to ask outright if she was cheating on me, but I didn't know how that was going to go without any evidence behind me. So when my wife told me she was going to go out with friends, I showed up at that friend's house. They were surprised to see me and instantly looked guilty. It didn't take long to get them to tell me what was going on. So I went home and waited for my wife to come home to confront her about her cheating. The first thing she seemed most upset about when I confronted her was that her friend had broken her confidence. The guy she was cheating on me with was her high school boyfriend who also lived in town and was married. At the time, she was treating me terribly. She learned he was taken, which was crazy to me. My wife was married. To me, I would think that would have played some factor in her decision-making, but it didn't. When she started treating me nicer, or what I perceived as nicer, she and the AP started up a relationship. I was in shock for a while, unsure of what to say or do. Eventually, I asked her why she did this. My wife gave me some crap about her high school boyfriend being her one true love. She didn't think they stood a chance of getting back together because he lived across the country. However, just before he got married, He moved back to the town with his wife and thought that was her chance. I asked what about me, and she just cried. The tears would have moved me at one point, but no longer. My only response to her was that she would get the divorce she wanted, so she could be with her high school boyfriend and precious true love. We had a month-to-month lease on the apartment, so it wouldn't be that hard to get out of it. She told me I could keep the apartment if I wanted, and she'd go live with her AP. I wanted to mention that the AP was married, but I didn't care anymore. My soon-to-be ex-wife was no longer my problem, frankly. To my surprise, she did end up living with the AP. His wife had left town to go back to be with her parents, leaving his house with an empty spot just for my wife. It was almost so romantic if you didn't realize that both of them had blown up their marriages to be together. Once those two were moved in together and the divorce process started, the rumors started to fly through town. Everyone was eventually coming up to me apologizing about what happened and telling me that they were sorry for how everything went down. I was embarrassed at first for the town to know what happened, but then I realized how my ex was being treated. She and her AP were essentially being treated like the town pariahs. No one wanted anything to do with them. What they had done was unforgivable in their eyes. It got so bad that the AP sold the house, took my ex with him, and left one night. I wasn't upset because I was glad that I would no longer have to see her around town. To think that the town itself had sent her running with her tail between her legs. Anytime my ex came back to visit family, which was a couple of times a year, mind you, the town shunned her. When she brought the AP with her, it was even worse. I eventually moved on and met another woman. She was someone who had been in my class. Like me, she was also dealing with a divorce because of her husband having an affair. It's not to say the two of us bonded over this, but it was something we could relate to about each other. Now the two of us are married and expecting our first child. We have our own house in the same small town we were born and raised in, which is exactly what I always wanted. It turns out I just wanted it with the wrong woman at first. My ex-wife, as far as I know, is still with the AP, but I have heard rumors of the two of them fighting in public anytime they visited town. It was fitting to know that the two of them hadn't been able to run off into the sunset like they initially wanted. I am just not going to think about them and will focus on the new life I am building with my second wife.